Hello guys. I quite often get the question what PC I can recommend, what PC parts I can recommend, and I get that mostly asked by my friends, but also here and there it pops up in my YouTube comments. So I decided to put together this one PC which should be enough for the average guy, for the run-of-the-mill user who doesn't do gaming, who doesn't do Photoshop and Premiere Pro, who just sits at his Microsoft Office and Excel spreadsheets, Google's uses Facebook, uses Google services, and you know it, Netflix, all this basic computing stuff. It can be done really, really cheap nowadays since computers have just gotten so fast and so advanced. You don't need high-end components anymore. You can do it on the cheap. And I just see a lack of content about this on YouTube. You have millions of PC builds, which are gaming builds, which are way too fast for most people out there, way too expensive. But I here chose particularly a cheap system because I know that the average Joe doesn't want to spend a whole lot of money on this system, but what he wants is that it reacts fast, so that it boots fast, that it launches the programs fast. He doesn't necessarily care about the multitasking capabilities. He doesn't give a crap about graphics and anything. I know that from experience, he just wants the computer to be fast and react fast. It doesn't need to be super powerful, but it needs to be fast. There is a difference between those two things. You can have a really powerful computer, but it can be slow. But you can also have a fast computer, but it isn't particularly powerful. You can put a Celeron CPU in a system and put in an NVMe SSD, an M.2 SSD. It will be super fast, but it won't be powerful. On the other side, you can put a Ryzen 9 or Threadripper CPU in a computer and install Windows on a hard disk, and it will be super powerful, but it will be slow in booting. So there is a difference between those two things, and it decided to focus more on the fast part. For example, the CPU I'm about to tell you is a real treat. Like, probably my favorite part of the whole bunch is the CPU. I would go for a Ryzen 3 3200G 4.2 gigahertz. Yes, there are new Ryzens on the horizon. Got the joke. Anyway, but this CPU, I cannot recommend it enough. Even if the new Ryzen series drops, it will only get cheaper then. But right now at 93 euros, I cannot recommend this enough. I've had this very CPU for a PC I built on my own, and it was a real awesome CPU. It was really fast. It can do all the basic daily tasks with ease. It can do light gaming. It can even do some little video editing with ease. The APU, the Vega 8 graphics are awesome. Definitely enough for most people out there. I don't see the necessity for a dedicated GPU anymore when you have this APU. So this Ryzen 3, an awesome CPU, and I also see it long term not getting any slower or unusable. Like in 5 years down the road, I think it'll still be kicking ass. Like for the daily office task and Netflix and Amazon, Amazon Prime streaming, YouTube, it will do it with ease. No problem there. 4K playback, no problem at all. So I don't see this being outdated in the next year. So this is a really nice chip. Please give it a shot. If you're into cheap computing, this is probably the best I know of. So then of course, we don't have any lot of money to spend, so we are not going for high-end fancy components. I just chose the cheapest DDR4 RAM I could find, and that was the Corsair Vengeance LPX 8GB module. 8GB is enough for most people, is actually too much, I would say, but just to future-proof the system, because Windows is getting more bloated. 8GB is just enough for most people. Sure, it's not a lot by today's standards, but it is fine. So 8GB, 2400 megahertz, nothing fancy, clocks in at around 33 euros. Then we have the cheapest motherboard I could find, which was an ASUS Prime B450M motherboard. AM4 motherboards aren't really expensive at all, so I would say just shop around a little bit, maybe get not this particular one, but I would say this one, since it's the cheapest one at 72 euros, I would say that's fine. We don't even need any new fancy features. This can do all the basic stuff. So yeah, that will be fine. Now we come to a little more fancy part, which you probably didn't expect, but I decided to put in here a Samsung 970 EVO M.2 SSD. I'm a big fan of M.2 SSDs because they are just so freaking fast, and solid state media has become cheaper than ever. And I decided I started to recommend this to people because I decided it is now time that hard drives are probably, especially for a boot drive, nobody should own a hard drive as a boot drive anymore. But even for storage, SSD are becoming more and more affordable. And so for a boot drive, a 500 gig at 120 euros M.2 SSD is an absolute steal, in my opinion. For the performance you're getting, it will be blazingly fast. The computer would literally boot in a second or two. And that's what matters. As I said, most people don't care how powerful it is when they build a cheap computer. They just want it to be fast. And so the regular office dude who will build this PC, or will probably have it built because he's not into computers, but anyway, you get the point. He will be blown away how fast this thing is. And apart from that, it's super reliable. So I'd say, yes, it's kind of expensive at 120 for our budget PC build. You can always get a SATA SSD if you want to, but why not give yourself this treat and you have the super speed then? So I'd say M.2 SSD. But of course, you can always go for a 500 gig SATA SSD, which will be around $70 or something. As a power supply, I chose the beQuiet 400 watt System Power 9 with an 80 plus gold certification. What matters the most about power supplies is the certification, so I decided to recommend you this one. It's a 400 watt power supply. It's more than enough for our Ryzen here and our other little components. Like, there are absolutely no other components other than the SSD in this computer. So you have no GPU and no expansion cards, nothing, just your RAM, your CPU, and your SSD. And so the power efficiency of the system will also be good, but the power supply at 400 watts will not be stressed. So that is a cheap power supply, only 45 euros. It will do the job with ease. And last but not least, I decided to go for one of the cheapest cases I could find. 34 euros for a Sharkoon VS4-V. I've had one of those. It is super flimsy. The quality leaves a lot to be desired, but it kind of looks not that bad. And as I said, the people who buy and build these PCs, they don't care for super fancy stuff. So I decided to put the cheapest case in there just to get the price as low as possible. We only focused on the really important stuff, processor and SSD and maybe RAM. But the rest is kind of, it doesn't matter. It just needs to work, it needs to be cheap. And so that's why I decided to recommend you this. And it, as I said, it doesn't even look that bad. It's just super crappy quality. I mean, but what do you expect from 34 euros as for a case? It's like, what do you expect? But also, on the other hand, you're not going to spend $100 on like a fancy, cool fractal case in a PC that's a budget PC. Really not. So without a Windows license, you are looking at a grand total here of 397 euros. Of course, prices always go up and down on Amazon because, sometimes they got something on sale, sometimes not. So this can go like plus minus $20. But for the most part, you get it. This is a 400 euro PC. It will do all the daily stuff for most people with ease. Of course, that's only the computer, only the PC tower. If you still want to factor in like a whole setup, so factor in a monitor and keyboard, I looked up a very cheap 24-inch 1080p BenQ monitor, a GL2480 for only 125 euros new. LCDs are super cheap. They're worth next to nothing, so a 1080p monitor will not set you back anything nowadays. So just remember, that brand new monitor, 24 inches for 125 euros with warranty and all that, you can't beat that price in my opinion. You can get much better deals used, So maybe if you're into super cheap stuff like me, just maybe get a used monitor. It's not gonna be a lot worse, really. But anyway, we building here a new PC. You can probably cut prices in half if you go for used parts on this. Just remember that. But anyway, then I decided to factor in $30 for mouse and keyboard, and for a Windows license, I decided to factor in $20. For a grand total, I have 572 euros invested for a total PC setup with Windows, with monitor, keyboard, and PC. Less than $600 for a whole setup and less than $400 for a PC. Nowadays, computers are as cheap as ever and as fast as ever. So these are my 2 cents on what I think in August of 2020 is a great value PC. Tell me what you think. Of course, there's a ton of more hardware that's out there, and maybe even better configurations. Just write it down below if you want. I can make different computer videos, like in different price ranges. But I just decided to go what is the absolute cheapest PC, which is not total crap. It's actually a pretty good PC. So yeah, tell me what you think. What can be changed? Tell me a different motherboard. Tell me different CPU. Although I think you're not gonna get me my opinion change about the Ryzen 3. It's just such a great CPU. And yeah, just write me how much it costs in your country. That's also very interesting. Write me how much it costs in your country. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.